Cain walked through the front doors of the Hernando, Mississippi police station and asked to speak with a detective. He was completely calm, convinced he was about to clear his name and walk right out. What he didn't realize was that investigators had been waiting for exactly this moment, and he was stepping voluntarily into a psychological trap. To understand why Cain was sitting in that interview room, we have to look back at the 22-acre family estate in New Mexico. After his father passed away, a bitter inheritance dispute ignited. Cain returned from Canada to find his uncle, his grandmother, and his stepbrother living on the property, and he wanted them gone. The tension over that land reached a breaking point when those exact three relatives suddenly vanished. Police initially treated it as a missing persons case, fielding strange, contradictory phone calls from Cain himself, claiming he hadn't seen them. That search ended a few days later, miles out in the desert. 2 deputies responded to a brush fire and found a flipped-over vehicle. Inside the smoldering wreckage were the incinerated remains of Cain's missing family members. Detectives immediately suspected Cain, but suspicion isn't enough for a conviction. They had no murder weapon and a heavily compromised crime scene. To close a multi-state homicide case, they needed their prime suspect to sit in a room and willingly confess to an unthinkable crime. This is where investigators employ strategic elicitation. Instead of slamming a folder of evidence on the table, detectives intentionally withhold what they know. They let the suspect talk, encouraging them to build a detailed, rigid lie that can be easily disproven later. Sitting in the interview room, Cain confidently laid out his rehearsed alibi. He claimed he went to the property to talk, but another uncle aggressively chased him off the land, firing a gun through the front door. Detectives didn't tell Cain they already scoured the uncle's house. There were 0 bullet holes and no surveillance footage of Cain. Police knew exactly where Cain was. Cameras caught him and his sister, Cassandra, buying bleach and kerosene the day their relatives disappeared. By letting Cain talk for hours without correcting him, detectives forced him to commit to an easily verifiable lie. When a suspect firmly anchors themselves to a false narrative on tape, it destroys their credibility in front of a jury, much faster than confronting them with the facts from the start. With Cain locked into his lie, investigators introduced a classic prisoner's dilemma. Both suspect the police know something and must choose, stay silent or turn on the other. Confronting Cassandra with forensic evidence, they made it clear, if Cain confessed first, she'd take the fall. The detectives applied intense pressure.
They reminded Cassandra that helping clean a crime scene carries severe felony tampering and accessory charges, forcing her to weigh her loyalty to her brother against the reality of going to prison and losing her children. The pressure worked. Cassandra broke, telling the investigators that Cain claimed he found the family members already dead, and she admitted to actively helping him rip up blood-soaked furniture and scrub the property clean. It is a near certainty in criminal investigations. When isolated co-conspirators face life-altering prison time, the instinct for self-preservation shatters their mutual trust, giving investigators the exact leverage they need. Back in Mississippi, the detective finally re-entered Cain's interrogation room. Cain was still holding on to his fabricated alibi, assuming his sister was far away and sticking to their shared story. The detective didn't ease into it. He bluntly told Cain that the game was over, detailing exactly what Cassandra had just confessed to, how they picked up the bodies, loaded them into the blue Subaru, and drove them out to the desert. You can pinpoint the exact moment the realization hits him. Cain goes completely silent, sitting frozen as his entire defensive strategy evaporates in seconds. The person he trusted to corroborate his lie had just handed him over to the police. With nowhere left to hide, Cain offered a desperate partial confession. He admitted to the logistics of tying a rope around his stepbrother, dragging the bodies into the car, and setting the fire. But he absurdly claimed he walked into the house and found them already dead. The interrogation succeeded by meticulously cornering the suspect. Admitting to a massive felony cover-up became Cain's only logical retreat once every other exit had been dismantled. By the end of the interrogations, both Cain and Cassandra were formally charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence. Their entire plot was rooted in securing a vast 22-acre patch of dirt in the New Mexico desert. Now they are both facing the prospect of spending the rest of their lives behind bars. Systemic pressure and the predictable, fragile flaws of human nature eventually dismantled the plot. Forensic science provided the baseline,
but the suspects themselves provided the truth.